Hi, everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining us today for our live webinar, Implementing Shift Down Security with Nirmata, Avoiding Costly Misconfigurations and Enhancing Cloud Native Innovation. My name is Randy, and I will be your moderator for today's session. I do have a couple housekeeping items that I want to share with you. This session is being recorded and will be sent out shortly after we conclude. And we do want to make this as interactive as possible. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat and we will address them in the Q&A session at the end. I would like to introduce you to our panelists, Boris and Anusha. Boris, would you like to start off and give us a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Boris Turchiev. I'm a principal solutions architect here with Nirmata, and generally I work with our customers to use the building blocks that Nirmata produces and turning them into effective ways to govern both their infrastructure as well as their overall security posture and journey as they march through the cloud and the very different uh, transformation journeys that everybody is taking. Anusha, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, thanks, Morris. Thanks, Randy. Hey, everyone. I'm Anusha. I'm a technical product manager here at Nirmata. I manage enterprise Kiverno and our policy management solution called the Nirmata Policy Manager. We are excited, to do this webinar today. Apologies for the initial technical glitch. So I want to set some context on, why we are doing this webinar and, what's basically the agenda for, say, the next 30 to 40 minutes. So Boris and I usually, hear about this shift down security paradigm from our various customer and partner conversations. So it so happened that, as we were exchanging notes, we realized it is worthwhile to talk about shift down security because this concept itself has been adopted in various ways. So we have seen customers already implementing shift down security without even knowing that what they're doing is shift down security. So we believe it's important to clarify what this concept is, how to implement it the right way, and also, more importantly, to understand that it complements our existing security strategies and it does not replace any of our existing best practices. And if implemented correctly, it can be very well a game changer for modern security best practices. So today we'll just discuss how our customers adopt shift down security practices and how Nirmata can help you in your shift down journey. Either you're starting with it or you are somewhere probably through this webinar, by the end of this webinar, you may realize you're already doing part of it, right? But how we can help you streamline your shift down security strategy as well. So Boris, would you like to kick off with a quick overview of what this means?
Sure. Yeah. So as Anusha said, a lot of our customers and a lot of our peers that I see at conferences or out into the world in general are already implementing a version of this. Some of you may have heard of concepts such as shift left, shift right. What shift down is trying to do is, I think, as we all know, the happy middle is usually where we try to kind of find bliss and ultimate control over everything that we do. So with shift down, what the concept is trying to accomplish is ultimately that middle ground, allowing your developers, your security teams, your platform operations team all to work together rather than kind of throwing the problem over the fence. Oh, I'm a developer. The security team is going to handle this, or the security team going, oh, hey, operations team, you need to figure out how to do this for me. I'm just going to give you a list of controls that I expect to exist. By allowing you to combine all of these separate groups, what you ultimately end up with is the concept of shift down. Well, both of our founders in various forms have spoken on the topic. Ritesh Patel was recently on a webinar with some analysts from the industry, as well as the former CEO of Chase or CTO of Chase, discussing how the banking industry and the financial industry and those industries in general are moving towards the concept of shift down. And kind of one of the key takeaways from that, and I believe there'll be a link to the webinar will be included at the end of this as well, is that a lot of people again don't realize that they're doing this, and by naming that, hey, we are going down the path of shift down, we are able to create the right atmosphere, if you will, for all parties to agree on rowing in the same direction. On the other hand, Jim Bariwaga, our CEO, was at Cloud Native Security Con, and he also discussed this in collaboration with Google around how we need to use shift down to emphasize platform teams. I think we've all heard platform engineering nonstop for the last 18 months. Platform engineering is kind of the new thing. And by being able to introduce security practices, being able to introduce good governance at the start of your platform journey means that you now are able to give the tools for all the other teams that ultimately will live on your platforms the ability to implement shift down in the development cycle, in the deployment cycle, in the governance cycle of the end users of your platform. So again, this ultimately ties it all together and makes it easier for developers to follow security guidelines, be informed when they are, bumping up against the security guideline, but more importantly, give them a reason and a way to then remediate or request an exception or fix the problem themselves in some self-serving manner. Anusha, how do you feel about what I just said, and what have you seen from your side of the world?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. When we definitely have to bake all of these best practices into the platform itself. And another observation that I've had is whenever we bring up shift down security in any of the customer conversations or partner conversations, it can cause some confusion. And I think this is mainly because of we all know about shift left security strategy that has been prevalent in the industry for quite some time now, and so much that few enterprises have shift left as an initiative that they take up, and they have several activities lined up for shift left, especially things like moving security and checks into the CI/CD pipeline itself. But now when we bring up shift down, there are a few questions around, okay, what does this mean? Does this replace my existing shift left initiatives? Or is it just yet another buzzword in the industry? Or more importantly, even if I buy into this approach, who is going to implement this, right? Which team is responsible for making sure my company or my org is shift down compliant, or we are following shift down strategies? So these are some of the common questions that I've come across. And honestly, I'm not surprised, because the very first time I heard about shift down, I had similar questions because I knew about shift left. But okay, so what is shift down? But now I think to clarify, so shift down does not replace shift left strategies, but in fact, it complements it. And we do have few demos today that that will help you, hopefully realize the differences and how both are equally important to achieve, secure environments. And when it comes to who is responsible for implementing it, what we advise is this is best implemented and owned by platform teams. So platform engineering is on the rise. Like, in the past 2 to 3 years, platform teams have been, are being formed at different companies. Either they are brand new teams, or previously we used to have DevOps, SREs, DevSecOps. So some of these teams are also being rebranded as platform teams. So whether they are new teams or the older teams being rebranded, the idea is the platform, it could be an internal developer platform, or it could be a third-party platform that you use. The security best practices have to be baked into the platform itself. The end goal for this is obviously to have secure environments, but also to enable self-service for your developers so that their productivity increases. And if you bake all of these best practices into the platform itself, it is easier for developers to adopt these best practices, because there are a lot of things that can go wrong when it comes to security, right? You have to be careful in terms of vulnerabilities, in terms of misconfigurations, and it becomes hard if you put the entire onus on the developers to make sure everything is working right, and by making everything as shift left. So it's going to become hard for the developers, and in some cases their productivity might go down. So that is the exact opposite of what we all want, right? So by following this approach, you're actually making platform responsible for managing all such security best practices, and your developers can benefit from it. So that's what I've been observing in different conversations, and also the feedback that I get from people who are already implementing this. But Boris, do you think now, for example, a customer comes to you and says, hey, we want to implement shift down security. Do you think there are any prerequisites that this team or this organization needs to follow?
Yeah. So the main and most important thing is you need a way to express your security controls, your security needs in a unified manner. Obviously, there is the number of security tools out into the world is huge. The CNCF landscape is littered under the security umbrella with many tools that are trying to help you protect your Git repository, protect your Kubernetes manifest, protect your Kubernetes cluster, enhance security. And as Anusha was kind of pointing out, what ends up happening is alert fatigue. As an end user, if I am going in and I am just kind of getting bombarded with different messages, different formats, different tools telling me, hey, you're doing something wrong, but are never telling me how to fix it, where to go to figure out more about the problem. Can I maybe accept it because I have a specific need, and I can now go within my platform portal and go, hey, I need an exception to this problem, and here is my valid business reason for it. Please approve or deny. That is where the biggest kind of immediate bump against the wall that is security everybody tends to experience. And one quick, I think, visualization of this is hopefully everybody can see the screen here. One great example of how we at Nirmata go about doing this is with the idea of admission control. So whether you're using it in your Kubernetes cluster, whether you're using it for other means, what happens is you need a way to ultimately write a control and a policy once and be able to carry that policy across your different use cases. So whether, again, as I said, whether it's in a Git repository, whether it's in your cluster, whether it's anywhere else, the admission controller becomes the heart of everything that you are doing. And one of the biggest things that everybody tends to look for, especially these days with the amount of vulnerabilities and CVs that come out for Docker images, is things like image sign, right? I need to make sure that when I deploy a workload, that image is an approved image. It is an image that lives in my catalog, and more importantly is an image that is current, signed, and again on the approved list of images to use. And again, through utilizing the admission controllers, we can insert the control point that gives back the developer an information that says, hey, your Kubernetes manifest is currently using an image that is unsigned or is using an image that is not approved. Click here or go here to request an exception. And this is kind of the main thing. I'm going to stop sharing this for now. This is kind of the main thing that I see most people kind of have the aha moment, if you will, as it comes to shift left and shift down and kind of being able to empower all of the end users to work within the system and work together with all the other teams rather than ultimately banging their head against the wall and going, why is this not working? I was told I need to put this in production. How do I put this in production, right? And filing many tickets and talking to many people to ultimately arrive at, hey, you need an exception or you need a remediation for this.
Yeah, I think that totally makes sense. Like, if there's like a lot of, alerts that are just popping left, right, and center, and it just causes panic, and you won't really know what to look at. And it's just like if everything is critical, then nothing is critical, right? Like you cannot pay attention to any of it, even. So it's very important that you reduce that noise. And it's also very interesting where you showed about the image signing, a workflow there. Because even when, customers are implementing shift left, most teams surprisingly focus only on scanning for CVEs. They scan their images for vulnerabilities. But the most common security issue that occurs is also due to misconfigurations. Because we have everything as code, like, we have infrastructure as code, Kubernetes manifests are as code, we have policy as code, we have CI/CD as code, application as code. I think basically star as code, right? Like everything is as code. It is very easy to go wrong in any of these configurations. Like it could be an honest mistake, but it opens that loophole or that security backdoor where now an attacker can gain access and can do the worst possible things. So it is very important for platform teams to realize that it's not enough to just scan your images for vulnerabilities. I'm not saying you should not do that. You should definitely do it if you're not doing it already. But that's not the entire picture. That does not completely secure your environments. You should also be scanning your configurations for any issues, like, are you allowing, a root, run as root to be true, or are you allowing privilege escalations in your containers? So all of these need to be thoroughly checked, verified, and it is impossible, say, for a human to do this manually. And for that, we have tools like Kyverno, which is a low-code policy engine. You write all your policies in YAML files, and you can directly verify all your manifests for misconfigurations. And the beauty of admission controllers, like Boris was explaining, it helps you block, unwanted requests or bad requests. So, if I had a presentation to show, I would probably underline, preventing misconfigurations, because the concept of preventing misconfigurations is so powerful because you are blocking from bad resources from entering your clusters, from entering your cloud environments. So it means there are fewer issues to look at in your actual runtime. You need to do both. You need to do admission control. You also need to, say, run periodic scans, because you never know when, say, a new CV might come, or you might have missed a check while in admission control. So you really need to do both of these things. But if you're proactively keeping bad resources at bay, like you're not allowing them to enter your clusters, then it means you have fewer alerts to deal with. You have, less alert fatigue, and you can focus on the issues that really matter. So one part is admission control, but we can even shift this further left or down. You can integrate all of these checks that you do at admission control also at the time of, writing a PR for a Git repository, for example. You're writing your manifest files, you create a PR, you can actually, or you should actually run these checks at your GitHub level or your repository level itself, so that somebody who is writing a manifest file gets that quick feedback and they can go and fix it. And you see fewer your requests are being blocked, so that you don't have to wonder later, oh, everything was fine when I ran it in my local environment, but maybe when I pushed it to staging or a dev environment, I see that my requests are being blocked. So it's good to have this feedback early on in your development journey. And I think, Boris, you have something to show regarding that.
Yeah. And I see that people are asking questions. We will get to them as soon as we kind of get through the main talking points. So please keep throwing questions in the QA box. We will 100% address them in a little bit. All right. So before I jump in, first, I think I want to just kind of help everybody visualize what Anusha is talking about here and why it's very similar to what we were discussing with the admission control. Being able to take that policy and that control that you wrote for your developer that says, hey, you cannot use image A or B or whatever it may be, and being able to then bring it into your code base is very, very, very powerful. Being able to scan and utilize that exact same policy at the source of truth, right? All of us are moving towards everything as code, and being able to get that information, get that report, have the ability to work with that information is the first step in any security journey, right? We want to create gates at all possible entry points, but at the end of the day, if I can't tell you quickly and immediately that, hey, your Kubernetes resources have these kinds of issues, or if you were to apply this in production, it will not work, or we will break production because of reason X, Y, and Z. You will always end up, in the inevitable, oh, it's 2 a.m., production is down, what happened, how am I fixing it, etc. The people, anybody in that industry, I think, has had some version of that horror story. So what we're talking about here is being able to scan repositories, analyze the contents of the repository against your either best practices that we are able to provide, such as PCI compliance or Kubernetes best practices or EKS best practices or Terraform best practices, or whatever the best practices for your organization is. And then being able to push it out and report on it and give a visual representation of what's happening, where is it happening, and your end users are able to actually take that information and do something with it. So what does this look like? I currently just switched over to the Nirmata platform. Anybody on the call can sign up and actually play around with this with a free trial. So please do just go to nirmata.io, sign up for an account, and you can actually play around with this yourself. But once you enter we have a repositories category that you can pull up and onboard your own repository for scanning. I'm not going to walk through this workflow for this demo, but it's a pretty easy and simple 3-step process. We walk you through everything that you need to do. Whether you're using GitLab, using GitHub, Bitbucket, insert your Git source of truth of choice here. All of them will work. But what you would be presented with once the scan works and you have chosen what policies you want to apply against it, you will get a view similar to here. You'll see that I have multitudes of different repositories already onboarded here, and I'm getting an understanding of, hey, some of them have Terraform files, some of them have Kubernetes manifest, some of them have just direct Docker files. And again, this brings me back to, okay, if I can take that policy that I wrote, to start with, and I can now apply it to Terraform, I can apply it to Kubernetes, I can apply it to Docker, I can apply it to all of these different resources. Very, very, very powerful, but also we're shifting down, right? I am now able to receive actionable feedback before at the time of code submission rather than at the time of deployment, right? So let's just kind of drill down and see what you get. So as you see, we are able to drill down. I can switch and get the reporting for the different things kind of come out right now. For the different resources, you can see what is failing, what is not. Why is something like not dropping all capabilities in a container important? Well, because we have ways to privilege escalate if we do not, right? We don't want, say, a front-end service to have root access. Generally, a JavaScript application does not need such a thing, right? So being able to do this is very, very important. But the kind of the follow-up and more powerful bit that becomes important here is that we can now also suggest remediations potentially for this. I'm seeing the chat pop up. I have not seen the messages. Outer panelists, if it's important, please interrupt me. And so let's. Is it now? I'm not sure. What am I doing
just
wrong?
go a step behind, like back. I believe you want to show the remediations, correct?
Yeah, I wanted to pop up. Yeah, I wanted to pop up the remediations.
Yeah, just you are in the right place, so yeah, so you can go back to that. Yeah.
Okay, here.
Yes, just go to that. Okay. Yep, go to the first one deployment YAML. Yeah. Because I believe that has, okay. So the thing here is now we see that, the repository here, as we see from that, path on top, this is the Spring Boot example repository. So we can scan any branch, or we can scan, you can scan a main branch, or you can scan your dev prod depends on how you configure your branches to, you say, a cluster mapping, right? For example, if you're using a GitOps tooling like Argo CD, you can say all your files that are in branch dev should deploy to a dev cluster. So now with Nirmata, you're able to scan all of your Git branches. So if you see the drop down, Boris, for all branches, can you just select one of the branches? Yeah, main. Yeah, so the idea is like now the view remediation diffs is actually enabled for you, because it's hard to provide remediations against all branches. So we kind of limited that you have to select a branch first. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for that. Appreciate the assist. But what I was trying to kind of highlight here is that the importance of this is that, hey, you're not doing something great. What do I do with that information? How do I solve the blank page problem? How do I solve I have a problem, but I don't know what to do? Now we actually actively provide you with, hey, here are the problem areas of your manifest. Here are the suggested solutions. This at least gives you a starting point, which as a developer is very, very, very powerful and enables me to quickly fix and provide solutions to the problems that are being introduced within my repository. But now that we have seen the policy report scanning, Anusha, I think there is the next kind of evolution of this is, well, what if I run into the problem of this is a valid use case? I need to have a discussion on record, if you will, as to why I think this is a valid business reason to accept my violation.
Right. I think I'm going to share my screen first. Yes. So like Boris showed, we can scan now our Git repositories, which is great. And now it shows us a bunch of violations that are there. It can also show us the remediations. But the remediations are for best practices. For example, you need to run something as non-root. You need to set that field to true. But it could be possible that your application to work properly actually needs that setting to be true. Now, how do you tell a tool like NPM or any other security tool that, hey, I really need that. I need you to give me an exception, right? Because you know what the risk is involved because you have developed your application in a certain way, and say, for example, it's going to run in an air-gapped environment. All ports are going to be blocked, so you're pretty confident that a certain violation can be relaxed, or a security measure can be relaxed. So how do you go about doing this? Typically, like before I introduce policy exceptions in our platform, so when I ask this question to users or customers, if you are in such a situation, how would you do this? The immediate one or two answers that I get is, oh, I'm going to turn off the security control for some time, or I'm going to find a way to bypass my security tool or something like that, or I'm going to try in a completely different environment. So now for that, you're going to set up a different environment, try out your things, and then come back and fix it. So you realize it involves so much hassle, right? And God forbid, if you actually turn off your security control and you forget to turn it back on, you are now, introducing a whole lot of issues in your environment. And also these security controls, you cannot turn off, it's not your free will where you can turn off any security control, because there's a security team that mandates, these controls need to be in practice and it has to be enabled at all times. So now let me quickly show you if I'm a developer. So the view that Boris was showing you, we have different roles in our platform. So this is the Nirmata Policy Manager. So the view that Boris was showing you was an admin view. So now I have logged in as a developer. So we call it a DevOps user. So for a DevOps user, the view is restricted to only the namespace that I need access to. I don't really need to see other namespaces, other clusters that are onboarded onto this. I am only focused on my namespace that I'm interested in. So I've created a webinar namespace for us. I have a demo cluster here. So just quickly going through this, I can see what are all the findings that are there. I have about 16 failures. All I really have is one Nginx deployment app running, and it has just one replica, and it already has 5 violations. I can actually show you my deployment spec. It is very, rudimentary. And this is, and this example is from the Kubernetes documentation, right? And another thing, I always stress on, like when talking to people, is Kubernetes is insecure by default. So the security best practices are not baked into Kubernetes. It's the responsibility of the end user to actually ensure that all of these guardrails are in place. So yeah, so this is a very good example, right? So this is an example that was there on the Kubernetes documentation, and I applied it, and I already see, 5 violations that are there. So now, like Boris was showing remediation in case of, GitHub scanning or repository scanning. So these are deployments running in my demo cluster. I can also see remediations for those. So again, to, just to highlight how important and valuable policy exception is. Now let's see that, this remediation is telling me, okay, let's go to the diff. So this is probably similar view as what Boris was showing. But now in my original deployment, I'm setting host IPC network PID to true, but ideally, best practice says all of these settings should be false. Okay, great. What other suggestions are there? It says to drop all capabilities. It says set run as non-root to true. But now, if I download this remediation, this suggestion, and I apply this to my deployment is going to break. It's not going to run. Why? Because my Nginx deployment requires to run as root. It needs certain level of privilege to actually run. It needs certain capabilities to run. So I cannot directly go and apply these things, but I need to be aware of what is required to make my application run. So that's why what I'm going to do is now I'm going to ask for an exception. And like I said, exceptions need to be reviewed because you're actually asking to bypass a security control. So I need to give a proper explanation. So now in this scenario, Boris is going to play the admin. So I need to convince Boris that I really need an exception. So need to make my Nginx run. So I can say, from when do I want this exception? I can select a start date. I can say for how long I want it. This is also super useful because you have exceptions in place and then you forget to remove your exceptions. So that's not a good practice either. So we always want an end time, although we do have a never expire option, but use it sparingly. And then I can say I want exception in the webinar namespace and demo cluster. I can either say give me a blanket exception to this entire namespace, or I can select specific violations. Now I know the policies, I want relaxation for. I actually want for privilege escalation, run as non-root, and capabilities. So for these 3 policies, I don't want the tool to be continuously throwing errors in my face saying, hey, you're violating this. So let me do this. Great. Now my request is submitted for approval. So as you can see, I can see all the exceptions that I've requested here, and it's in status needs approval, and there are about 4 reviewers. So as an admin, probably Boris can show it later, in settings, you can actually configure who all should be the reviewers for exceptions. So you can add your security teams for this so that whenever somebody requests for an exception, they get a notification directly and they can review the contents of it, right? Like okay, probably Boris has a better view as a reviewer. I'll just quickly, let him share screen and we can continue later.
That I need to unmute. So I have both received an email, as Anusha pointed out. You can, we have full integrations with an Active Directory or whatever directory service that you're using. You can specify which users should be administrators, which should have lower privileges, etc., who you want to be able to click the yes, we should allow this exception. I got an email. I think anybody needs to look at an email, but I also within the UI, I can see, hey, a minute ago, Anusha has requested this exception. I can now go in. Yeah, I know that it needs an approval. I'll say this seems okay for now, and I can approve it. But again, the most important thing that I think everybody needs to kind of keep in mind is that if an exception does not have an expiration time, it becomes the standard, right? So being able to time gate this is very, very both powerful and very, very important because it establishes a time frame for the exception requester to either fix this or to work hand in hand with the teams around to define a new policy or a new structure around this particular problem. So I'm going to hit approve on this. And at that point, you will see that I'll go back in here. You'll see, hey, this is approved. I have a record of who approved it, when it got approved, obviously the messages. The auditability of this is very, very important as we're talking about, security practices and everything else. We can see where this is deployed to, what the specific exception is, and the specific resources that it is going to actually affect. With that, I'm going to stop sharing and throw it back to Anusha.
Yep. Thank you for approving my exception. So now that we see, the deployment status is complete. So what does this mean? A policy exception resource has been deployed in my cluster, so I can quickly check that. So this is the most recent one, 62 seconds ago, that Boris approved. So with this policy exception, let's now look at my reports again, right? So I have access to webinar namespace. Let's come here. Okay, I probably need a minute or two to actually reflect the reports here, but I can quickly check here in the policy report. And again, okay, I did -A, I'm sorry. Oops, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, as you can see, try to get this in a single. Okay, so this is the column I wanted to show, the skip column. So here, as you can see, because there is a policy exception in place, all my now results, instead of failing, are now being skipped. Initially, probably I had 6 failures for each of them, or like +3, and now they're being skipped. So that now every time this tool is not going to tell me, hey, you have a violation, I can peacefully debug my, issues or whatever that I want to do in that exception period and not be worried about something throwing continuous violations or alerts for me. So this is skipped. And the good thing about Kyverno is, I can see all of these reports directly from my CLI, right? Because this is a standard API. So this is from the working group policy. So whatever I can see in the UI, I can also see from my CLI because all of this is Kubernetes native. I think it'll take a minute or two. Let me just give this a last try or we can move on. Okay, yeah, I think this is going to take a couple more minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the important thing to take away is that what Anusha was pulling up in the command line was the real-time live feedback. Obviously, our UI will eventually sync up to that state, and we'll have it up and ready to view from that graphical user interface. But you get an immediate response to that exception. It doesn't take, there isn't a delay, oh, this is going to get deployed in some manner in some amount of time. It's an immediate, hey, the exception is in, my reports are getting skipped. The update to the UI takes, a minute or two to process and to go through all the things that it needs to go through.
Yeah, and also the thing is, not just reporting, it tells me what to do next, right? Now we saw remediations. It can tell me how to fix this. It can give me valuable suggestions and save me enough time, because if I'm a developer and like you see, there are so many configurations, right? Obviously I cannot know about each and every configurations. I'd have to spend time reading about why is this important, why is this failing, what does this mean to my application and how do I fix it, right? There's so much, cycles that you spend on just debugging or figuring out what needs to be done. Instead, this is a very good, starting point or, guiding path that, you can quickly start getting to fixing your things in, production or any of your environments. So if not for actual fixing, you can go for, requesting for an exception so that maybe this issue is not that important to you right now. So you may want to, silence the error, if I may say. You may want to not have too many violations. So you can request an exception, maybe get back to it after you're done with your other, say, P0 task. So with Nirmata Policy Manager, we tell you what the violations are, and we also tell you, hey, these are the next steps that you can take so that you are more productive, basically. Yeah, I think with that we are also 40 minutes into this webinar. I want to give time to Q&A as well.
Yeah, I think the last 10ish minutes or so, would love to answer any questions the audience may have. But hopefully the key takeaway for everybody here is that, what we're trying to do is turn gatekeepers into enablers and being able to make sure that security is a day zero problem and not a day 2, 3, 4, man, we're going to get to it eventually problem.
Awesome. Thanks, Boris. Just like they said, if anyone has not had the opportunity to put questions in the chat for Q&A, now's the time to go ahead and do that. I'll make sure to address as many questions as possible with the allotted amount of time that we have, which is about 8 minutes. We do have one question already in the Q&A, so we'll start there. How does Nirmata support configuration management and validation for Kubernetes environments? And what best practices should we follow?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what we were kind of walking through to already demonstrated how we work through config management and how we validate Kubernetes, both in the Kubernetes cluster itself, but also before you even get to the Kubernetes cluster. And as far as best practices, one of the good things about the Nirmata platform is that we've done the heavy lifting of generating, I think it's about 12 or 13 policy sets that are best practices around, the kind of the popular tool sets out there, such as EKS or PCI or NIST 8000 or 800, etc.
Yeah, and just to quickly add to that, what Nirmata can do, I want to take 30 seconds and just show it instead, if I interpreted the question correctly. So what we have is something called policy sets. So this lets you configure your policies all in one place. So you can also have the source of truth of these policies as in GitHub, because as we see more and more adoption of GitOps practices, all code is necessarily in GitHub. But what we can do is, curate those sets for you. We can say we have a set of RBAC best practices, or you can create your own, curated custom set where you say your organization should follow baseline policy. So now in one place, you're configuring the, policies that you're interested in or your security team wants you to follow. And irrespective of whether you want to, run a CI/CD scan or you want to run a scan in your cluster, or, maybe in future you want to scan some of your cloud resources. For all of these different, policy enforcement points, the actual policy is stored in Nirmata itself, so that you don't have to, consult different Git repositories or consult different teams. Or you can store all of this here and apply the same set of policies at different points. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Anusha. It looks like there's another question that comes out to 2 technically. What if we are not using Kubernetes as a platform, or, what if we are using cloud container services such as ECS?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and we're working with more and more actually organizations which are either still happy with their existing infrastructure or moving to container orchestrators that are not Kubernetes, such as ECS. And this is where something like a cloud admission controller, along with some certain solutions that will allow you to scan cloud resources directly and bring your policies and everything that you saw today uh, into your cloud environment, into your ECS, into your uh, infrastructure is something that we are going to be announcing here in the coming month or two. And we're already working with folks to test this and have kind of a top to bottom uh, solutions built out to ultimately allow you to, uh, as I said, take a top down approach to your security and have all of these controls work across the board.
Awesome. Anusha, do you have anything else to add there before we move on?
Yeah, I think Boris has already been working on a cool solutions, with our design partners, and also he's been getting, pretty great feedback from some of our select customers. So, like he said, we want to announce something pretty soon, and we'll be launching a private preview. And if you're interested, if you're running your workloads in ECS or any other, say, serverless technology, not necessarily AWS, it could be Azure or any other cloud provider, do reach out to us. We would definitely be interested to get some feedback, or how we can help you with your cloud services as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Looks like we have like two more questions. Well, at least try to get to one. How does shift down security help platform teams deliver developer self-service?
Yeah, I think developer self-service is a main goal for many platform teams, because again, it all comes down to productivity of developer teams. Like, think about it, right? Like, if I have to, raise a Jira ticket, or go through hoops to get, say, just a namespace so that I can test my application, I might have to spend 1 day, 1 week, depending on what kind of organization I'm in. But instead, if it was self-service, it's just a click of a button, I get my namespace all ready for me. That would be great. But now, how do platform teams ensure that the namespace that the developers are getting are secure, right? That is where when we speak about baking security into these platforms. For example, like whenever I create a namespace, I need to be able to put all the guardrails in it. Like, I need to generate some resource quotas, I need to have network policies in place. So all of this can be automated. So think about this way: I click a button requesting for a namespace gets created, but it has all the security goodness already baked into it. So this is how platform teams can reduce their workload also, of making sure, because now they can be rest assured that their namespace that they're providing is, secure. And also development teams, they don't have to wait for days to get a working environment, and they also don't have to worry about, oh, am I doing something wrong? Like, is this going to cause some issue later on? Am I going to be flagged by security? So they can also be, sure that everything is in place. I can just focus on developing my application. Yeah. Boris, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, as it were.
Awesome. Well, it looks like we're at time. I know we have a couple other questions. I'll make sure to get to those once we hop off the webinar. And
Um,
then, Boris, did
I
you
was
have some?
actually sorry. Yeah, I was actually going to address the Riley's question. Yeah, so we are already in the marketplace. So if you are using OpenShift on AWS, you can actually start immediately using this. As far as Quay or any other registry, everything that you're seeing here, we have uh, image signing integrations and plugins that allow you to integrate with whatever your ultimate end registry is. But feel free to reach out to me or Anusha directly, and we can definitely discuss a little bit more on what that looks like. Sorry.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we are at time. So thank you, everybody, for coming along. Hopefully this was informative for everyone. If you, as I said, have any questions, please reach out to Boris at Nirmata or Anusha at Nirmata, and we'll be more than happy to lend a hand and take you on your security journey.
Yeah, thanks, guys. We appreciate you taking time out of your day, and a special thanks goes out to our wonderful panelists. So thank you, Boris and Anusha. We appreciate all the knowledge and insight. Once again, this session will be sent out shortly after, so be on the lookout for that. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. So thanks, guys.
Everyone. Thanks, Randy. Bye-bye. Thanks, Boris.